So, what are the
Actually,
current issues going on in India, specifically
actually
Chennai?
the most current issue is, of course, politics. Or I think the fate of the government itself is in balance now. Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram and many others, well, they are the center of a controversy, unsavory controversy. So and that looks like the very fate of the government is on the balance now.
Okay.
They,
So,
they, have, they have been assailed by various charges, essentially corruption charges, yes. 2G more particularly.
okay. So let's
And
talk
in fact,
about inflation. Um,
inflation, yeah.
what do you think what do you think are the causes?
Uh, Causes of inflation are several, many and varied. Could be economic, could be political, could be social, could be historical, could be many. I think as far as India is concerned at this particular moment, the causes of inflation, I think, is to a significant extent psychological, which has historically been the cause of inflation in this country. Inflation in this country is not strictly an economic phenomenon, but very much more than that, unlike many other countries.
Okay. And what kind of people are being affected right now because of
The
this?
common man, most particularly, the common man, and of many people who are poor even to start with. Middle class, of course, badly affected. The poor class, even more affected. Now, the better question to ask is who is not affected? Who is not affected are the people who can set prices, particularly set prices of common consumption. They are hardly affected. Others are. Others are to varying degrees. To believe that the poor aren't affected is probably wrong. In many ways, even the people who don't depend generally for the livelihood or the economy of the nation, even they are affected. Look at slum dwellers, for example. Even they are affected. That's number one. Number two is one has to know what are the items of expenditure of common men which are affected by inflation. Here again, generally speaking, when inflation hits the headlines, it's items of common consumption that are responsible for this wide coverage, wide responsibility, wide reportage, and obviously it's items of common consumption. Affects the poor as much as the rich, as much as the middle class. So I think everybody is really affected, the common man very much more.
Okay. Can you talk about any specific examples?
Those who can set the terms of price of their own expenditures. Yes.
Okay. Can you be a little bit more specific on the people setting the prices? You talked about them gaining the most from this. What kind of people
Clearly,
are these?
clearly the producers for one, the people who produce things of consumption, and very often also the middlemen. Middlemen play a subtle role, invisible role, but probably the most important role. Because inflation seems to benefit the middleman much more than anybody else. Clearly, it does not benefit the consumer. It may not even be benefiting the producer. The middleman makes the killing. The
Hmm.
question sometimes is who are the middlemen? Who are they in contact with? Who are who benefit from inflation? Probably in collaboration with those middlemen. That's the question to be asked. And one doesn't know. It looks like certain class of people who are in contact with the middlemen, who probably are in some way the middlemen themselves. They benefit more.
Hmm. Okay. The next question is what steps is the government taking to combat
It's
this?
difficult. Nobody knows. In fact, steps to check inflation has been talked about, has been discussed. I think for ages everywhere. One cannot immediately pinpoint the causes of rise in prices. Now, if you knew the causes of rise in price, obviously you can take steps to check it. But one does not really know. There are economic causes. There could be political causes. There could be social causes, and so on. Consider this: the hyperinflation in Germany, where the inflation level ran to stratosphere. In fact, what cost could one think of? It's not cost of production. It's not cost of distribution. It is not cost of demand. Then what? Is it the cost of money supply? But then did the money supply go up by a million times? No, not really. So one does not really know why prices rise the way they do. But there are some general economic reasons for that. And there are some psychological reasons for that. but there are certain political reasons for that. Should be a mix of all. It really should be a mix of all. Which one predominates? Economic, social, political? That I think varies from country to country, from time to time. Again, keep this in mind. Inflation does not seem to affect the developed, the democratic countries as much as it affects the less democratic, more backward countries. For example, America has never had hyperinflation. In fact, hyperinflation has been rather restricted to maybe post-war Germany
Mm.
and post-war Europe to some extent. It is not it is not a common occurrence, hyperinflation, talk in terms of inflation, huge inflation rates, but rather refers to certain kinds of countries. So that question to be asked. So it looks like it's a contrived inflation. It's a contrived phenomenon, not always natural, though natural causes do contribute, do probably set it off. And later on it becomes rather contrived.
Okay. So would you call the current situation in India hyperinflation?
Oh no, by no, it's, yeah, no, I don't even call it hyperinflation. I don't know how one defines hyperinflation because when you talk of hyperinflation, you clearly think of Europe and Germany in particular, in the 1920s, or even countries like Zimbabwe. Now, as far as India is concerned, I don't think you can call it hyperinflation. Inflation of 20% or 25%. I don't know whether you can call it hyperinflation. It's very bad. It's very high. I'm not sure whether you can call it hyperinflation. I suppose in terms of the common man, whom inflation hurts most, I suppose you can call it hyper in that sense. But in an economic sense, from the point of the economists, I'm not sure that you can call it hyperinflation.
Okay.
Because
Um,
when you use the hyper, you talk in terms of stratospheric levels like 100%, 200%, 300%, and so on. It is possible certain items of consumption reach that level, 100% increase or 200% increase or more, but not the average level.
okay.